Hey friends, welcome back. So great to be spending some time again with you today. We're taking a few podcasts to learn a little bit about tea drinking, primarily herbal tea, but today I'm going to touch a little bit on all types of tea and how we can keep toxins out of tea. I've learned some things recently, even after being an herbalist for most of my life, that sort of blew my mind. Some things that I had taken for granted about tea drinking that I just didn't know what I didn't know. So maybe you're like me and you don't know some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. Hopefully by the end of this podcast, I will have convinced you to source your tea carefully and opt for loose leaf when you can. So why I want to talk about toxicity with tea bags is that I am currently taking Rosemary Gladstar's Home Study Herbal course, which is amazing. And there's a lot of things I already knew about herbs, but I have learned about herbs mostly from an Eastern standpoint through my aromatherapy training. So this is bringing in some Western standpoint into my herbalist practice. And with that, I've been introduced to a couple of little pieces of information that, for whatever reason, had fallen through the cracks for me in my previous studies. One of those things was regarding tea and toxicity in tea. So I knew a lot already about adulterants that are in a lot of our home care products, body care products, and supplements. I knew about additives in a lot of different sort of health products that are not disclosed. There's a lot of label lying that happens in the industry, but I didn't really realize that that happened in herbalism. So that alone has been eye-opening for me to realize that, just because I'm buying an herbal tea doesn't necessarily mean that what's on the label is actually what's in that tea bag, nor does it mean that those components within that tea are not carrying toxins of their own. So first of all, I want to talk to you about how to avoid toxins just simply by what you're brewing your tea in. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about how to avoid toxins in the tea itself. So first of all, did you know that most tea bags that you're going to buy, your average grocery store tea bag, unless the company is willing to disclose, most of those are sealed, like the little paper bag of the tea is sealed with plastics. Yeah, gross. So they will use either something called polyvinyl chloride or epichlorohydrin, neither of which sound like things that I want to put into my body. And what happens is that when you put that tea bag in your tea and you're steeping it, you are going to also be steeping the polyvinyl chloride or the epichlorohydrin. Icky. So you can't just trust that that's a little paper tea bag that doesn't have anything on it that you want to be avoiding. So what you want to do is look for tea bags that are from companies that have already disclosed that they don't use that type of sealant, or look for the ones that are stapled. However, even with staples, you might be getting exposure to heavy metals and, the sort of metal-based toxins. There are companies out there, though, that are high quality herbal tea companies that do disclose what they use on their tea bags, and many of them will be using only natural materials, unbleached materials, that sort of thing. Even tea bags that look like they're just paper, they may not actually be made with paper, or the paper itself of the tea bag may be treated with a chemical for various reasons to help to keep the tea bag from splitting open, because the fiber, as it obviously the paper gets soft, it's going to be more having a tendency to do that. So they actually coat the exterior of the tea bag with a chemical that helps to prevent that. It's actually a form of plastic. So you think you think you've done well, you've gotten a paper tea bag, but guess what? Nope, it's not just paper. So be careful with that. There are also some fancier style tea bags on the market that are clear. You might have seen these. They look more like sachets. They look almost like the shape of a fortune cookie or maybe a pyramid. And I did not realize, I thought that those were made out of, like, I don't know what I thought they were made out of, to be honest with you. I hadn't even thought that far. I was like, oh, these are fancy teas. This has to be high quality. No, those are plastic. They are made either with rayon or thermoplastic or PET, which is supposed to be a safer plastic, but actually starts breaking down in water that's 170 degrees, or they are made with polypropylene. Do you really want to be drinking any of these things? Gross. And it might seem like it's not that big of a deal, but there was actually a study done on these plastic tea bags, and they found that in one single steeping of one plastic-based tea bag, there was 11.6 billion microplastic particles and 3.1 billion nanoplastic particles in the water just from that one tea bag. I have some of these in my cupboard. I will be throwing them away now that I know this, because I do not want to be putting plastics into my body for any reason. They are endocrine disruptors and they are carcinogenic, and we want to avoid them as much as possible. So when you're sourcing your tea, if you're going to use tea bags, look for companies that on their website right away, they will disclose how they seal their tea bags, what their tea bags are made out of. Companies that really value the medicinal and therapeutic benefits of the teas, or even just a superior flavor profile, will be willing to disclose what they use. Now, something else to know though about tea that comes in tea bags, and this is not a universal thing because some companies care very deeply about the quality of the tea that is going into the tea bag. But just so you know that when it comes to regular mainstream tea production, your English breakfast tea or Earl Greys, whatever, the ones that have caffeine in them, they actually use the dust, almost the tea dust left over from the loose leaf tea production that is ground up, is of lesser quality, and those go into tea bags. So this is why I want to start pushing you toward more of a loose leaf tea if you can do it. Now, sometimes you're on the road and you're in places where it's not easy to make an infusion with what I'm going to show you, but there's a lot of new options out there on the market for infusing your tea in healthier ways. I talked about this on the last episode, but what I like to use are these stainless steel infusion baskets. I've literally had these since college. They last for forever. I'm sure you can source them a lot of different places. Being stainless, that means that they're not going to be leaching something like aluminum into the water. You do need to be careful with the metal infusion baskets, as some of them are aluminum, and that would be something that you would want to avoid, as we are now coming to understand an excess of aluminum in our system can lead to potentially a lot of things that we don't want to be involved with. There's also enamel baskets. They are actually inserts that'll go right into your teacup. So here I have one, and it just slides right in there. It has little holes on the outside. And then, as I taught you in the last episode, you will want to put a lid on that to infuse it. I like these and I don't like them. So I like them in that they're obviously, not made of toxic materials. And I like them that they make a really beautiful infusion for your first time around. But I like to re-infuse my loose leaf teas at least twice, sometimes more, depending on the potency of the herb that I'm using. And what I find with these is that once there is a wet tea material in these, they don't always infuse as efficiently the second time around, or if you want to put them back into a partially full teacup to just, do a top off and give yourself a little warm up, they don't like to go back in the water once they've become wet. Let me put it that way. However, it's a very classy way to enjoy some tea that is basically toxin free. And the thing about your loose leaf teas is that you have so much more control over knowing how much plant material you are using in your infusion, and you have the fun of being able to mix different things together. Not only that, but I think you'll find once you switch over to your loose leaf teas that even something like your Earl Grey teas, oh my gosh, to experience even the sensation of, grabbing a pinch of the Earl Grey and putting it into your tea basket or your infuser, whatever you're using, even the visceral experience of that can be very ritualistic and very satisfying in its own way. And it helps to already get the sense and the flavors going of the tea, whereas just plopping a tea bag into your teacup might be efficient and might not take very much time, but you will notice that the barrier you've created, even with that tea bag between you and the tea, takes away some of the scent profile of that tea experience and takes away some of that enjoyment. You know, tea drinking has been ritualized in a lot of different cultures around the world. And I think that there's a reason for that. It's you know, in Sweden, we talk about fika, like you're going to purposely take this time out to really be present in the moment with whatever this thing is that you're going to enjoy for your warm beverage. Of course, in Japan, there's the tea ceremonies. Lots of other cultures around the world have ritualized some aspect of their tea making. And I think there's a reason for that. And we need to learn how to be more present in the moment. So why not use your tea drinking experience as an opportunity to do that? So the second thing I wanted to just mention, sort of in passing, but just to make you aware of it, is that the toxins in tea don't just come from the tea bag or whatever you might be steeping your tea in. They can also come from the plant themselves. So just because a plant is an herb or a plant does not mean that it is free of heavy metals, pesticides, and other toxins. Unless a company is testing for that or is having some third party come in and verify that there is no toxicity in that tea, or this can apply to supplements as well. The supplements that we take that have the herbs in them very often will contain trace amounts of arsenic and lead and other heavy metals that are very unhealthy for us. So how would you know if you're drinking a tea with those or not? Well, again, you want to source carefully from companies that do their homework. Or better yet, learn to grow some of your own. Now, right now, at the recording of this podcast, we are in late October, and the season for tea growing in North Dakota is definitely over. But I spent all summer collecting and drying different herbs for enjoyment during the winter. We've got tulsi, we've got lemon balm, we've got peppermint, we've got all kinds of stuff. Even something like rose hips can be dried and then used for a decoction, which is a boiled style of tea infusing, you know, later down the road when you want something like that. So there's lots of different things that you can learn to grow easily, even in pots on your balcony, if you don't have a garden space that you can then either drink as tea fresh or dry. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more in the future. But for now, sourcing even your loose leaf tea from companies that have high ethical standards, that care about fair trade, that have those sorts of values as a company, are going to be more likely to not be sourcing those tea ingredients from places that have toxicity in the soils, that are using heavy amounts of pesticides and those types of things that might carry over into that finished herbal product. So here are some thoughts for you about how you can get some toxicity out of your life that you may not have even been aware is part of your lifestyle. So if you're a tea drinker like me, I've gone most of my life not knowing this, and I'm actually really grateful to know now, because now I am empowered to make a different choice for myself and my family, and I can easily do that and also get more enjoyment out of the tea drinking experience in the process. So I hope that this information is helpful. Helping you live a more holistic lifestyle with ease is my goal. If you've enjoyed this, please comment, like, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And if you're listening on your podcast app, I always appreciate those 5-star reviews, and I